hearing you guys talking about this. So let me ask this question. I'm going to ask this question to Brad. So I'll kind of set up for you. So kind of many of our palates, as you know, have been trained to enjoy kind of the savory fats, the salts, the sugars. Am I getting hungry right now? I think I am for some reason. But it's a trick question. It's not a trick question. But we know that our palates are set up at an early age. And maybe we should get into this a little bit more, but how do we go about, maybe in your opinion, how do we go about untraining the brain, our palates, when it's been so set up already? You know, people, as you said earlier, people want to try to make these kind of moves, but they regress a lot. So how do we kind of do that? And let me ask you a second question too. Number one, how do you start maybe doing that untraining? But then number two, how do you keep somebody from relapsing at the end of the day? What's your thoughts on that?
Wow, so a little bit outside of my area of expertise, I'll admit, but when we talk about some of the plant-based foods and some of the companies that are producing them, we can see those as kind of being the gateway drug into a plant-based diet. So when you get a burger that is entirely plant-based, but it tastes just like what you're used to, it can start feeding your mind with, hey, this is actually, I can eat a plant-based diet and I can be satisfied, and I can feel full, and I can feel happy about my meals. So that can, you know, just kind of give them that little entry. And then over time, they can start experimenting with some other things, and getting to the point where maybe their palates are not craving some of those fats and salts and things.
Thanks on that one. I mean, I think you offer a good perspective. Dr. Loam, what's your perspective on how you're doing it? Because I know you're advising patients that you're seeing, and you're trying to help coach them through this kind of change. How do you go about doing that, untraining the already trained palate?
Well, I agree with everything that he said, that sometimes these we call them transition foods, to give people the taste and the pleasure that they're used to while they're learning the skill of integrating more whole, unprocessed plant-based foods into their diet and getting more towards a complete whole food plant-based diet. So introducing more healthy foods by default crowds the unhealthy food out. And then the taste preferences change. They always say it takes about 2 to 3 weeks before salt and sugar cravings go away, but it can take as long as 2 to 3 months before fat cravings go away. And that's the more of a challenge. But it's super important, because as you really eat clean, you can change your cravings. When somebody eats a standard American diet, something that's hyper stimulating your palate with sugar, salt, and fat, and then you go eat a healthy plant-based meal, it tastes like cardboard to people. It doesn't taste healthy at all. And people say, there's no way I could eat plant-based. Like, this food doesn't taste very great. But if you stick to it and season it right, it does taste great. Honestly, your preferences change, and you begin craving and loving those plant-based foods. And when you go back to eating something that's salty or sugary, you kind of go, whoa, what's that taste? So salty, so sugary. I can't believe that I used to eat that. One of the interesting ways that this actually happens, there's some good data that shows that our microbiome plays a role. That if you start eating animal-based foods, you select for a microbiome, which sends feedback to your brain saying eat more animal-based foods, because that's in the best interest of your microbiome's survival. However, if you eat more plant-based foods, say you eat beans, the bean bacteria grow inside your gut and tell your brain, hey, you need to eat more beans, because if you don't, we're going to die down here. And so it sends feedback back. So as your microbiome changes, a lot of your cravings change. And I think that's a crazy, interesting way to see how really powerful it is. As you eat more plant-based foods, your cravings will change. And so how do you prevent people from relapsing? It's just setting up the right environment, doing it as a family, getting the unhealthy foods out, and just learning that skill of how to cook the food well. Once you learn the skill, just like if you learn how to play a guitar, you got that skill for the rest of your life, right? Learn how to eat a plant-based diet and eat healthy. It's a skill you have forever. So you gotta learn that skill. Don't just rely on buying food from somewhere or some quick, easy fix. You gotta learn that skill.